Bi'ur Mishnah Tet. Another Mishnah that has to do with this concept. Mishnah zo היא המשך המשנה הקודמת. It's the continuation of the previous Mishnah. ונחלקו בתנאים. אם עיקר עירובי תחומים בפת או עיקר עירוב ברגל. We're going to see, there's going to be a debate. What is the main way to do עירוב תחומים? Are you supposed to do it with a meal? In other words, you're supposed to leave a meal over there? Or the main part is you're supposed to be there? What's more important? Which one is the main one? There's a main one and a secondary one. They might be both important, but which one is the real one? So let's see. This is what the sages said. What did the sages say? Ha'ani, somebody who's poor, me'arev beraglav. He's allowed to do iruv with his feet. And we're going to see there's many ways to learn this verse. Ha'ani me'arev beraglav. The poor is actually to make the eruv with his feet. What does it mean his feet? With his location. He can go there before Shabbos, stay there, and when Shabbos comes in, that's it, he bought it. Bechegon ze she'adam ba b'derech. It says, what's the situation? It's a simple situation. A person is walking on the way, he's not carrying a meal between two cities, and he's got a meal waiting for him in the inn in the city. He doesn't have food with him. Ve'eni mopat, he doesn't have bread. She'achshav anihu, when you're traveling, you're an ani. Amru chachamim shemutar lo le'arev baraglav. In such a case, we tell the person, you don't have a meal? So since you don't have a meal, we are going to allow you to do what? To do the iruv with your feet. Hainu lomar, which means you can say shvitati b'mkomi. It says, I am staying in my place, b'makom shani omed bo, in the place that I'm standing. Kmo sheshaninu b'mishnah kodemet, like we said in the previous Mishnah. Let's learn the Amar like the Mishnah says it, not like we learned it. We learned it. Doesn't he say it to say Amar? Let's say he doesn't. He says Amar, whatever the reason is. Amar Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir says, Anu. Rabbi Meir says, Anu ein lanu ela ani. Rabbi Meir says, guys, everybody is an ani. That's the only thing that there is. What does it mean? So it says, Lo ikelu chachamim la'arev baregel, ela le'ani bilvad. It says, look, it says, who's allowed to do eruv without food? Only a poor person.
They don't have the food.
They don't have food, that's right, it says. That's why it says the poor person does it with his feet. It says that's what he's learning from the Mishnah. Make sense? Okay. Rabbi Meir Sover, in other words, it says, Rabbi Meir thinks, Ikar iruv tchumim hu bepat. It says, usually when you do an iruv, how should you do it? This is what Rabbi Meir thinks. How should iruv be doing? With a meal. With a meal. That's how you do an eruv. An eruv should be done with a meal. Umefarshim ta'amo, and we explain this meaning. Shal yedei she'adam avi mopat, when a person brings with him bread, harei umegale da'ato shemakom shvitato sham. It says he's opening a table. It means that he's planning to stay over there. That's what it is. Velo b'makom acher. It shows that this is the place for his meal. In other words, he's planning to be there. He has a proof that he's planning to be there. So according to Rabbi Meir, the main way to make an eruv is only with bread. You have to put bread, food. אבל כשהוא מערב ברגליו, אין זה ניכר לכל שהולך לשם בשם עירוב. But when he's walking, and then he gets to a place, and then he walks back, nobody knows why he's walking. Maybe he's taking a ride. He's going on a hike. It doesn't show that he's doing it in order to make an eruv. He's just walking. Over here, when you put bread over there, you're showing for sure that's where I plan to stay. When you're just walking, it doesn't mean that you're actually going to stay there. It means you're walking. That's what he's saying. לפיכך לא התירו חכמים לומר. Therefore, the sages did not permit to say, שביתתי במקומי. It says, this is where I am. Or שביתתי במקום פלוני. Or this is where I want to be. אלא למי שבא בדרך ואין עמו פת. In other words, it's only a leniency for a poor person. And by the way, a poor person doesn't mean cash. A Poor person over here means somebody who doesn't have a meal. You can be a billionaire, but you're on the way, you don't have a meal, then you can do it with you consider to be a poor person at the time. You don't have a meal. ונמצא שעני הוא אותו שעה. We find that the guy was a poor person, at that moment. Poor from bread, he didn't have a meal. That's what it means. ויש מפרשים, and there are those who explains שכל הבא בדרך נקרא עני. It says any traveler is called an עני, אף על פי שיש עמו פת, even though he does have bread. אבל עשיר, traveling, everybody is poor. But a rich man, what is a rich person? היינו היושב בביתו ויש לו פת. It has nothing to do with cash. It has to be with your main dwelling place or your temporary, or not your main dwelling place. That's the way they learn it. ורוצה לערב עירוב תחומים במקום מסוים, and he wants to do an עירוב תחומים in a specific place, אינו קודש השביתה אלא אם כן עירב בפת. If you're at home, you're sitting in your home and you want to do it in a specific place, you have to bring bread over there. I don't care if you're poor or not poor. ויש מפרשים, and those who explain, שכל היושב בביתו נקרא עשיר. Anybody who is sitting in his home is considered to be a rich person. שאין לך אדם שאין לו בביתו מזון שתי סעודות. Because there's no person who doesn't have at home meal for food for 2 meals. Okay. So this is according to Rabbi Meir. In other words, the main way according to Rabbi Meir to make an eruv is with food. That's the main way.
Unless
the main way is food. If you don't have food, we will let you do it with bread, with your legs.
Okay.
Yeah. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, you didn't understand. The verse means exactly the opposite of what you're saying. Exactly the opposite. How? Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Echad ani ve'echad ashir. It says whether he was poor, whether he was rich. It says bein ani u bein ashir. It says I don't care if you're poor, I don't care if you're rich. Me'arvim baraglaim bli pat. It says the main way to do an eruv is what? With your feet. That's how you make an eruv. Not with bread. The main way is your feet being there. That's the main way. שסובר רבי יהודה says, עיקר עירוב תחומים הוא ברגל. It says, the main part of עירוב תחומים is feet, not the bread. שהואיל והוא טורח בעצמו, it says, since the guy walks into the place, ערב Shabbat, by himself, he shows that what? That this is what he wants. יש שקר יותר משמערב שם מאשר שולח שליח בידו פת. He says he shows more that he wants the eruv than he's sending somebody go put over there a meal. So this is in other words, Rabbi Yehuda learns exactly the opposite from the Rabbi Meir. But then he says, so what's this whole thing with the food? So he says, I'll explain to you what's the whole thing with the food. ולא אמרו מערבים בפת. So you know why they say we will also permit you to do with the pot? It says the main thing is with your feet, but we'll give you permission to do it with the bread. You know why? להקל על העשיר שלא יצא ויערב ברגליו, because not every rich guy wants to go out ערב Shabbat and walk, out of the city 2 miles or 1.5 miles, whatever it is. He doesn't feel like walking. So he sends the messenger. But he doesn't. So the messenger has to leave something. So we're doing a leniency for the rich person who is too lazy to walk. This is this is the שלא יצטרך ולטרוח ולילך בעצמו. We don't want, we're not going to make him to do it by himself.
Special rules for rich people.
Not exactly. Think about practical. What was the idea? You have 2 cities, right? So practically, not everybody, there's going to on many Shabbatot, people would want to travel from city to city. So every Shabbat, they will send a messenger, in case we hear something, go put it so we can travel between. Now, not everybody has to go. One person goes for everybody. That was the idea.
For the whole city?
For the whole city. He's making an eruv. So now you can have eruv between cities. One guy can do it. You send a shliach. The city sends the shliach. Says, see, this is our food. Okay. Here, this matzah, we all share in it. You go take this matzah and put it there. So now we can all walk between the cities. That's the practical application. Yeah. שלא יצטרך לטרוח וללך בעצמו. So he doesn't need to go and walk by himself. You want the entire city, it's not practical. ויוכל לשלוח פת למקום. But still this says, the main part is the legs. Not the main part is the... זהו. על ידי שליחו. בגמרא מבואר, in the Gemara it says, שלא נחלקו רבי מאיר ורבי יהודה. What is exactly this disagreement? אלא אם מותר לו לעשיר היושב בביתו לערב ברגליו. In other words, Rabbi Meir says, if you're an ashir, are you allowed to do it with your legs? היינו, לצאת לסוף התחום ולומר שביתתי במקומי. If you go out and sit over there, are you allowed to say, without food, eat bought it for me? אבל הוא יושב בביתו ואומר שביתתי במקום פלוני, אף רבי יהודה מודה. But if you're sitting in your place and you say this is where I am, רבי יהודה also admits שאינו קונה שביתה, שלא הקילו חכמים בזה אלא למי שבדרך, because the חכמים only did this leniency for somebody who's walking on the way. ויש סוברים, there are those who says, שאף עני היושב בביתו ואין לו פת, דינו כדין הבא מהדרך. And somebody says, if you're very poor and you're sitting in your place and you don't even have meal to eat, we're going to include you to be an ani like somebody on the way. And some say, no, if you're in your house, I don't care if you don't have food. והלכה כרבי יהודה, דהלכה כרבי יהודה, in other words, that the main part is legs. And the only reason that we will send a messenger is to make it easy on the people of the city. But the main eruv is with feet. You get there. That's the main idea. We give a leniency to say, okay, we can send a messenger. Okay. בעניין עני ועשיר, so we see, when we say the words ani and ashir, poor and rich over here, it has many different connotations. You can learn it. You can learn it somebody with food, you can learn it somebody at home, you can learn it a city dweller and somebody on the way. There's many ways to learn it. משנתן ישנן דעות שונות, there's many opinions. וכבר הבאנו לעיל אחדות מהן. And we already brought some of them. רבנו חננאל כותב, רבנו חננאל writes, שכל הבא בדרך עני הוא חשוב. It says, רבנו חננאל says, anybody who walks on the way, I'm going to consider him an ani. In other words, he's allowed to do it with his legs. Anybody. שאין פת מצויה לרוב עברי דרכים. It's because usually a person who's traveling doesn't have meals with him. It's not something that he has. המאירי כותב, the מאירי writes, ונקרא אני לא מצד חיסרון פת. It says the reason we are calling him an ani is not because he doesn't have a meal. That's not the reason. אלא מצד שעיקר יציאתו לא היה לקניין שביתה. Because the main part when he went on the way was not to buy a place for Shabbat. How do we know it wasn't to buy a place for Shabbat? How does he know? Because if he did mean to buy a place for Shabbat, he would have taken what? He would have taken bread with him. The fact that he doesn't have bread, which means he went out, he didn't think about Shabbat. He didn't think about Shabbat. If he would have brought bread, then it means he was thinking about Shabbat. That's what he says. ולא ישתדל בפת אלא שהיה בה בדרך. He did not try, he was just walking. וכל שכוונתו לשב שנייה שביתה. So now, if he meant to actually buy shvita, then shvita is how, according to Rabbi Meir? Food. With food. So you have to bring food. Don't tell me you're a poor person. הוא נקרא עשיר, is considered to be a rich person. שמן הסתם כבר ישתדל בפת, ודבר הצריך לעירוב. So don't tell me you're ani, you're an עשיר. In other words, it has nothing to do with money. Okay. Right? You see, it has to do with intention, according to Miri. לפי הרמב"ם, according to the Rambam, אף עני היושב בביתו, הרמב"ם says, even a poor person who sits in his house, אם גמר בליבו לקבוע שביתתו במקום מסוים, if he wanted to make Shabbat in a specific place, והחזיק בדרך, and he actually started walking, והלך כדי שיגיע לאותו מקום ויקנו בו שביתה, and he started walking to the place in order to buy שביתה, אף על פי שלא הגיע ולא עמד שמה, even though he did not reach it, כגון שיקבו חברו בדרך וחזר ללון, for example, whatever reason he didn't go all the way through and he went back to the city, נעשה כמי שעמד שם או שהניח עירובו שם. Because he is really poor, he doesn't have any bread, yeah? Even if he wanted to le'arev in part, he couldn't, because he doesn't have. So therefore we're going to count it. You remember we said for an ani that walks on the way, if he means I am going to be there and he can reach there before Shabbat, so he says he can claim it because he had the intention to claim it before Shabbat, even though he never reached it. Even though he never reached it.
Okay.
That's what the Rambam says.
Before Shabbos. He
Yeah.
reached it after Shabbos.
He never reached it at all.
Oh.
He went back to, he decided, he saw that he's not going to be able to make it. He started walking there. His friends started talking to him. And then he realized, oh, I'm never going to reach it. And he went back home. He can still use it on Shabbat. Because he had the intention to be there on Shabbat.
So it looks like the Rambam is the most lenient here. In a way, no?
He calls,
כאילו,
he's saying, since he doesn't have a pot to make an Eruv, you cannot say he went out without pot. Because he didn't have the pot, so therefore